Hello, my friends. Welcome back to our 40-day reading challenge as we go through the events of Jesus' life during this last week of his ministry. Today, it's day 15. We're in Matthew 24, verses 36 through 51, finishing 3 days, 3 readings that are all connected, that were all spoken by Jesus at the same time. I want to start with the story today. A few years ago, my family took a trip to North Dakota. And we learned something while we were there. Do you know what the North Dakota state tree is? It's the telephone pole. North Dakota is flat. North Dakota doesn't have much water, really. It's kind of an open prairie, and there aren't many trees. Sometimes as you're driving down these straight, flat highways, the only thing breaking up the horizon are the telephone poles down the side of the road. Interesting thing about those, as you're watching them looking down way ahead, they all kind of blur into one. And it's only as you get closer and go past them individually that you see them each individually. Think about that for a minute. As you look farther down the road, they all sort of blur together until you get closer and you see them as individual telephone poles. Why do I bring that up? 2 days ago, as we started this section in chapter 24 of Matthew, or I think it was chapter 13 in Mark, the disciples mentioned the beautiful temple, and they asked what I said at the time. They asked 2 questions. When Jesus talked about the temple being torn down, they asked, when is that going to happen? And when are we going to know these things are going to be fulfilled? Or if I can paraphrase, when's the temple going to be torn down, and when will the end of the world come, and how will we know it's here? Because that was the only circumstance they could think of that the temple wouldn't be standing anymore. And Jesus begins to respond to their questions, and at first, he seems to be responding to their first question: when is the temple going to be torn down? And many of the things that he talks about were indeed fulfilled in just the few years after his death and resurrection. In the 30 or 40 years after Jesus' ministry, these things happened. And of course, events like that have happened every year, really, from then until now, and will probably continue to happen. And as we peer into the future, as we think about the last day when Christ will return, sometimes things get a little blurred together. Jesus turns at this point in this chapter, and he starts to talk about what that day will be like, what that time will be when he returns. No one knows about that day or hour, he says. And he's no longer, it seems, talking about the temple being destroyed. Now he's talking about their second question: when is the end of the world going to come? When is Christ going to return? And of all the things that he says, I think the one thing that we take away from this is we don't know. Someday he will return. Might be tomorrow. Might take a lot longer than that. We just have no idea how long it's going to take. It might be a few thousand more years. We don't know. And we're not supposed to know. And it doesn't do us much good to try to figure it out. Our role is simply to live each day as God's redeemed people, rejoicing in each moment as we experience it, at the same time always being ready for the moment when Christ will return. Because of the faith that he's given to us, we are always ready. And when that day comes, it's not going to be a frightening day or a scary day. It's going to be a day of joy, a day of rejoicing for us as we get to see the fulfillment of everything that Christ has promised us. He's going to keep talking about this over the next few days' readings, as we're going to read some parables that Jesus uses to help us to get ready for that day of his return and to be prepared. So we'll continue talking about this for the next few days of readings. We'll see you tomorrow. God be with you.